Don Prince. I was an EM2 in the United States Navy.
So why did you join the service?
I went in the Navy because when I got out of high school, I was starting into college, and I had applied for University of Cincinnati, and then where I was working as summer help, they offered me the opportunity to stay a few months longer and make a little more money to get ready to go to school, and I needed that, needed the money. So I agreed, but in those days you got drafted because you were A1. It was before the days of the lottery for the draft. And so by my extending the time I was not a student, I got a draft notice in the mail and said go to the U.S. Army. Well, I'd already decided that when I was going to go into service, I would go to the Navy. So I immediately went and joined the Navy. And that's how I ended up doing it.
The Navy? Why exactly did you want to join the Navy?
Well, you know, I'd always had the Navy in mind for years. Before I had thought about when I would go in, I always knew I would serve. And I always just had it in my mind I'd do the Navy. Now, part of it, I think, was the semi-romantic idea, join the Navy and see the world, right? That was the old slogan back then. And I'd never seen the world. I mean, I was raised in Cincinnati, and I hadn't been very far. In those days, families didn't take international vacations very much. And certainly my family didn't. I was the son of a policeman. We weren't wealthy. And yeah, I did want to see some of the world. And I was old enough, and I'd been in high school, and my brother had gone off to college in New York, and I did want to get out of town and see some things. And I knew chances of me being stationed in Cincinnati were pretty slim. So I knew I was going to get to see something somewhere else if I joined the Navy.
Well, exactly like what years were you in the service?
66 through 69.
And where did you go to boot camp?
Great Lakes Naval Training Center.
Do you recall your first days of service after you were shipped out?
After I shipped out to my ship,
Yeah, like
to
your
my
first
duty
few
station,
days?
yes, I went to underwater demolition training after boot camp, and it was like boot camp again. So it was a tougher boot camp for a while, but it was different.
And like what did you do there that was like different than?
Well, it was much more physical, much more preparatory for hand-to-hand combat kind of things, and yeah, I was there for 6 weeks, and I was in the best shape of my life when I left.
Like how did you stay in touch with your family while you were?
That was difficult. If you were in the States, you could always make a phone call, but when you were out to sea on a ship, it literally took a month to 6 weeks to get a letter returned. For my letter to get home to my wife and for her to respond to me was a full 6 weeks.
And did you see any combat at any of the places?
On that trip, not actual combat, but my ship was the ship that rescued the USS Liberty. The United States Navy lost 35 sailors that day. My ship was the first one on scene to rescue them. So it was a moving experience as I look back, but kind of frightening at the time. I walked through, I was on board that ship. When we came aboard it was leaning heavily, listing, as they say about ships, and it was moving very slowly. They had attacked it with jets. Torpedo boat, they put a torpedo in the side of it, didn't sink it, should have. They burned up, they set the whole ship on fire with napalm, and when they launched the lifeboats to abandon ship, they machine gunned the lifeboats. They didn't want any survivors. We got aboard and fixed up the ship a little bit to help them. And my most vivid memory is seeing the blood all over the deck from the dead, and passing through the mess decks where they were using the tables to stack bodies on. Then I worked with my chief I was an electrician, and I worked with my chief electrician. We went down in this passageway inside the ship, and it was water up to your knees, with fuel oil floating on top of the water, and we were checking electrical circuits. We were resetting circuit breakers standing in seawater. Not the smartest thing to do, okay? But we did what we had to do to get the ship running again. We escorted that ship back to Malta, put it in a dry dock, and they repaired it and fixed it up, and it sailed home to the U.S. on its own power a few weeks later. And it's called the plan of the day, and it tells you what you're going to do tomorrow. I do have a couple of them. This is the plan of the day we went to rescue the USS Liberty. So it says, it's announcing to the crew, this is what we're going to be doing today. We're getting up early, we shut off our showers, we're saving all the water for the wounded, we're doing A, B, C, D, E, and I'm glad I've got that one. And then this is a summary of that day, multiple pages where the executive officer detailed what the Davis personnel did for the Liberty that day. And so those were two significant events in my life aboard the day.
Okay, well, thank you for the interview.
Okay, nice meeting you, ladies.
Me too.